Hello, friends and music lovers. I'm Charlotte Mundy. I'm a classically trained soprano who specializes in contemporary music, especially contemporary chamber music. And I live and work in New York City. And I noticed recently that I don't really take any time to look back and take stock of what I've done, like at the end of a concert season, for example. And I decided I wanted to start doing that. I also want to look back and express gratitude for every single musician I worked with, every single composer who wrote a piece for a concert, every single person who bought a ticket or bought an album or supported the work in some way, every administrator who made a project possible. So this is my video to say, wow, we did that, and thank you, universe, for making it possible. And I thought it would be a lot more fun if I brought you along for the ride with me. So here is my 25-26 season in review. The season started in September in Switzerland. Ekmeles vocal ensemble. I'm the core soprano in the group, and we do contemporary music. We commission a lot of new music, and we especially love microtonal music. So in Switzerland, we performed a piece that the Swiss composer Charles Uzor wrote for us called The Great Wall, and we combined that with movements from Johannes Ockegham's Requiem. That's a piece from the early Renaissance, and it's amazing how well those two pieces worked together. We performed in St. Gallen and Schloss Holligen, and I had never been to Switzerland before, but that place is beautiful. Oh my gosh, we were in this sort of mountainy, maybe not truly mountainy, we were in more like green hills with all these really cute little farms that were just outside of St. Gallen. It was stunning. We stayed with a woman who had chickens in her backyard, and it was just idyllic. It was gorgeous. So really strong start to the season. Then I flew back to New York, and Swoonfest was about to start. Swoonfest is a weekend-long festival that my chamber group Talk Ensemble puts on every other year. Talk is a mixed quintet with voice, flute, clarinet, violin, and percussion, and we commission a lot of new music for our instrumentation. And every other year we put on this 2-day festival where we premiere some new pieces. We invite musicians we really admire to come and share the bill with us. So this year it was at the Domena Center, and we performed a new piece for us by Levi Liu called Guanxi, Perceiver of the World Sounds, and it was so epic. Oh my god, I'm so excited about this piece. I think trying to describe it in words in this relatively short, quick format will not do it justice, but I'll put in a clip here. It was such an amazing experience to workshop this piece with Levi. It was great. And we also premiered the first part of a work by Victoria Chia, which was, more understated in a lot of ways than Levi's piece, but also totally beautiful and magical, and used the acoustics of the space in a really interesting way. So also on the festival were Yarn Wire, Rage Thorn Bones, Gushes, Blasé, and Las Mariquitas. It was amazing. It was such a fun weekend. Then at the end of September, Ekmeles had another show in New York City, also at the Domena Center actually. We premiered a new piece written for us by Georg Friedrich Haas, which was really exciting for us because Haas is one of the biggest names in contemporary microtonal music, and the piece he wrote for us was so beautiful and a little bit strange, and it was great. It's called Wie aus einer anderen Welt, and we paired it with music by Peter Ablinger, Anthony Braxton, and Aaron Gee. So that was September. Then in October, I had a bit of a break from performing. I worked on my dissertation a bit because I'm trying to get to the end of a doctorate in voice performance. But I did have a really fun gig at the very end of the month. I jumped in kind of last minute with the vocal ensemble Roomful of Teeth to help provide some backing vocals for the band Florence and the Machine. Florence and the Machine released an album on Halloween called Everybody Scream, which is an amazing album. It's gorgeous. And so I had a lot of fun just singing with them for one album release event in Brooklyn. So that was my October, pretty low-key. Then in November, Ekmeles had another show in New York City where we teamed up with Mivos String Quartet to premiere new pieces by Taylor Brook and Evan Johnson. That was really fun. Then later that month, Ekmeles went to Princeton and we premiered some works by doctoral composition students at Princeton University. So we got to work with Sophie Cash, Alieta Fundenko's Ellie Cherry, Hope Litwin, Kennedy Taylor Dixon, and Devin Greenwood. That was a really great crop of pieces. Some interesting thoughts about like human relationships, about fantasy and humor. I thought it was kind of a playful bunch of pieces, which is a cool energy to see in a school. Often I think when you're in the midst of earning a degree, there's maybe a bit of a pressure not to be playful, but to be very like serious and hard-hitting in what you're writing. And these pieces were serious. They were very well constructed, but there was something playful about a lot of them, which I really appreciated.
And they ran straight past us into the forest.
December was a month for familiar pieces for me. So at the very beginning of December, Talk Ensemble performed Love, Crystal, and Stone, which is a concert-length work that Ashkan Bazadi wrote for us, setting poems by Federico Garcia Lorca. We recorded it a couple years ago and released it, and we just wanted to bring it out again and play it again live for our New York audience. Later in December, Ekmeles did a run of shows of David Lang's Little Match Girl Passion. We do this every year in the crypt of a church in Upper Manhattan. We team up with Death of Classical to do these series of shows, and it's always totally magical. I love the piece, Little Match Girl Passion. I think it's a great piece, and it's always very moving to perform this every December. It's kind of like our version of Messiah or something, you know. Yeah, so that was my December. Then January came. In January, Ekmeles had another show in New York, playing music by Sinan Smanli, Wolfgang von Schweinitz, Catherine Balch, and a piece by the director of the group, Jeff Gavitt. He's also the baritone in the group and a composer, and he wrote a really fun piece called Attributa Sanctorum about a few minor saints and their strange life stories and the imagery by which they are identified in churches. In February, Ekmeles did a residency at Brown University. I loved being in Providence. What a gorgeous city. So many different kinds of architecture. Speaking of architecture, I tried to take some photos with a camera that I got for Christmas, and some of them turned out okay. Anyway, it was really great to work with those composers. Jessica Shand, Inga Chinilina, Isaac Barzo, Adelia Faizulina, James May, and Han. This was a really nice sort of aesthetic mix because there were a couple composers who were working with very traditional sort of sound palettes, completely acoustic, no extended techniques or anything wild. And then there were some scores that used very interesting and like experimental ways of notating things. And then there was a really cool, very dramatic, very bold piece for voices and electronics with a video component that was really cool. So that was a lot of fun to work with those composers. And while we were at Brown, we also performed Stimmung by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, which is a piece from the 60s that is, it experiments with the overtone series by telling the singers to basically do overtone singing, to sing with different vowels and bring out different formants. And it's a very sort of spiritual woo-woo piece. We like shout out the names of different gods from different religious traditions. We also recite some very cheesy erotic poetry. Luckily, the poetry is in German, so the audience can't quite understand it the way a German speaker would. So we performed that at Brown, and then we came back to New York and performed it again on Valentine's Day in New York City, because that's another thing we do every year. Stimmung is for lovers, is what we like to say. So, yeah, that was fun. Later in February, Talk Ensemble got to work with the composers at Columbia University. So we premiered new pieces by Diallo Banks, Omer Barash, Arjun Singh Dogra, Sophia Jen Ouyang, and Kitty Shao. And there were some really great pieces on this concert. It was really fun to work with these composers. I was struck by, I thought this group of composers was thinking a lot about identity and politics, not in a way, sometimes making music on those subjects can get a bad rap, but I think music can be a really beautiful and fruitful way to sort of work through issues of, of cultural identity, of political identity, a way to come to terms with things, or to start a conversation, or to see a conversation in a different way. That was a great concert. And then at the end of February, Talk went to Chicago. We did a residency at Northwestern University and worked with the composers there. Shout out Carlos Zarate, Jack Hamill, Megan DiGiorgio, Jo Yoon Park, and Pedram Diba. Awesome pieces for us. It was super fun to play. That program was really fun to play. And we also performed on the Frequency Festival in Chicago. We played a piece that Weston Olenki wrote for us called When the Great Fires Were Lit on the Other Side of the Ocean. I'm sure I'll tell you more about that piece at some point. It's so gorgeous. We love playing it. I'm glad we got to play it twice this season. We also recorded it, and we're going to release it next year. So be on the lookout for that. That was February. In March, my duo with Christian Quinones, who's an amazing composer and also my boyfriend, we have a duo called Pixel Tongue, and we premiered some new material on the Princeton Sound Kitchen concert series. It was a great experience for us to get to do that material for an audience. Then later in March, Ekmeles did a residency with the composers at the CUNY Graduate Center. So we premiered works by Emily Green, Nathaniel Otley, Nicholas Tran, Kevin Su, Chi Xia, and Julio Quinones. I thought there was a lot of tenderness and vulnerability in these pieces, which I really appreciated. And it was also a relatively playful bunch of pieces. So that was fun. That was great. Later in March, I went to Boston for a bit. I performed 3 Voices, which is a piece by Morton Feldman for voice and 2 pre-recorded voices. It's a piece that I have loved since I was in my late teens. It means a lot to me, and 2026 is Feldman's 100th birthday year. So I performed 3 Voices several times this season, and I really enjoyed singing it in Boston on the non-event series. It was in a beautiful room, great audience, super open ears, super engaged audience. It was great. And the clarinetist Madison Greenstone shared the bill with me. Madison also plays in Talk Ensemble, and they have a really stunning solo clarinet practice. So that was a great show. And then Madison and I both stayed in Boston for the next week to work on a project at Harvard University. A composer there, John Pax, really loves the music of Luigi Nono, an Italian composer of the 20th century who did a lot of work for acoustic instruments and electronics. So we performed a whole concert of works of Luigi Nono, and John Pax and some other Harvard students diffused the electronic sounds in very interesting, effective, thoughtful ways in the concert hall while we performed. It was great. Then at the end of March, I came back to New York and had another show with Ekmeles, collaborating with the concert series Qubit, and we performed music by Celeste Orem, Alec Hall, Laura Steenberga, and Laura Heindel. That was a program that was all sort of inspired by chant music, and I thought it really worked really nicely all together as a program. So then it was time for April. April started to get intense. Talk had a residency at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and we premiered pieces by Christian Glasscock, Ezra Simmons, Omer Kurtulus, and Orson Abram. It was such a great experience, a really nice group of people, very cool pieces. Then I flew to Rome and was a soloist in the piece Lost Objects, which is composed by the three Bang on a Can composers, David Lang, Michael Gordon, and Julia Wolfe. This piece is from the early 2000s, but the American Academy in Rome decided to put it on in conjunction with a festival they were having. It's a piece for three soloists, chorus and orchestra, and the Bang on a Can All-Stars instrumentation, which is like drum set, electric guitar, electric bass, and keys. It was so fun. I love singing with big ensembles like that. I really wish I got to do more of it, and I love the Bang on a Can composers' aesthetic. It was great. This was such a fun project, and it was great to get to be in Rome for a few days. I took my film camera there as well, and took some photos that I liked. Very grateful for that experience. So then I flew back to New York, and Ekmeles had a residency at Columbia University. So we worked with the composers Che Ali, Fiola Evans, Cem Guven, Josh Mastel, and Yanchi Chen, and they all wrote very thoughtful pieces for us. We performed the works in this resonant church space, and a lot of the composers really worked with the resonance of the space in an interesting way. So that was great. Right after that, I took the train out to Philadelphia to work on an opera by Andrew Burke called In Open Air, and we had two performances of that brand new opera at the Perch in Philadelphia. That was a really fun project because Andrew has some close collaborators who are filmmakers, and we shot basically a short film in the fall with me and the other vocalist, Tomas Cruz. And then that film that we shot was like a key part of telling the story of the opera that we premiered in April. I thought it was a super effective use of film in opera. I thought the music was really gorgeous. It was a great experience. So after In Open Air was done, I came back to New York and I did a concert with the amazing classical guitarist Jordan Dodson on the New Sounds New concert series, and we premiered pieces by Eli Greenhoe, Matt Simon, Rex Eisenberg, Long Fei Li, Yu Shu, and Tong Yu Liu. I thought there were a lot of really bold compositional ideas on this program. That was really fun. It was a very satisfying project. Also in April, I have to mention that Talk Ensemble released our album Between the Air, and Ray Lustig released the album Semmelweis, which I performed a ton of vocals for. It was so fun to work with Ray on this opera about the Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who was one of the people who sort of first discovered the importance of hand washing in the practice of medicine. So very cool that both of those albums came out in April. Then May came along. At the beginning of May, I got to perform Feldman's Three Voices once again, this time on the Long Play Festival in Brooklyn, which was such a thrill. What a great audience. What an amazing festival to be a part of. So grateful. Then I got to work with a bunch of Columbia undergrad composers. The amazing flutist Laura Cox, who also plays in talk ensemble with me, was also working with the students, so we performed 11 new duos for voice and flute. I'm not going to list all those composers, but I'll put them on the screen somewhere. It was so fun to work with all of them. After that, I sang with the chorus Voices of Ascension in a program that featured work by Ellen Reed, Sofia Gubaidulina, Messiaen, and the world premiere of an amazing piece by Celeste Oram called All My Salt Falls Short. That was a really fun concert to be a part of. Then Ekmeles had a concert in New York of pieces for voices and electronics by Kaya Sariaho, Christopher Trapani, Bethany Young, and George Lewis. And then Talk Ensemble had a concert on the New Year Festival. That was just a couple days ago, May 31st. And we performed 2 pieces with electronics because at this venue, the Fridman Gallery, they can set up a sort of surround sound system with, I think, 6 different speakers we had surrounding the audience. And it's a relatively small-ish space compared to where we usually play, so we got to get people really packed in there, nice and close. I love that feeling of like a really crowded, like a little bit sweaty sort of concert environment. I don't know why, there's just something really magical about those sorts of concerts. So anyway, we performed In a Forest, written for us by Michelle Liu, and again we played Western Olenki's When the Great Fires Were Lit on the Other Side of the Ocean. It was a cool program because both of those pieces are they have kind of a big scale, kind of a slow scale, and they're both at least partially about the strangeness and the sadness and the beauty of just being a vulnerable little human inside of nature, inside of these forces that seem so much bigger than us, and like we can't control them, and sort of reckoning with that lack of control. In Michelle's piece, I feel like it's sort of about relinquishing control and accepting the fact that we don't have control and becoming kind of formless. And in Weston's piece, I feel like what happens in that piece is I guess it is also kind of a relinquishing of control, but there's a bit more of a cathartic feeling of like longing and sadness and angst that builds up and then is released into the cosmos, sort of. Anyway, so that's what I did in May, and also in May, Ekmeles' album Nonsongs was released. You should go check that out. Very proud of that album. And then what I'm calling the end of my season is a concert coming up very soon on June 5th of 3 Voices. Once again, this time I'm performing it in Philadelphia at the Bowerbird Concert Series. And I'm really looking forward to that. Honestly, it's the perfect way to end the season. Well, there you have it. My 25-26 season. What a whirlwind. I think I counted 62 world premieres in that one concert season. And on top of those pieces, there were a lot of other pieces that were new to me that I had to learn that were not necessarily world premieres, but that was a lot of music that I learned. I don't know how it all fits in my brain. That's probably why I have such a bad memory. But so much fun. It's so cool. When I look back at all these concerts, I realize how alive music still is in New York and in the United States and in the world. And again, I'm just so grateful to every single person who makes it possible. And I'm grateful to you for watching this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. So thank you for being here. I hope I see you around soon, either in real life at a show or back here on the internet. I'm going to try to make a little bit more video content in the future. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, take care. See you soon. Bye.